All right, so we're starting a new chapter and a new section here, and we're beginning with photosynthesis. We're going to describe photosynthesis in eukaryotes, the main metabolic pathways, talk a little bit about some importance of photosynthesis and kind of how and where these pathways occur. The let's see, the image at the top, the upper right there, that's showing photosynthesis, amount of photosynthesis in green. So the greener it is, the more photosynthesis that there's going on and taking place. We can do this from a spectrum because photosynthesis absorbs certain types of light and reflects others. And so it's mostly reflecting green, and so we can measure the amount of green. And we can see there's lots of photosynthesis on land and a fair bit in nutrient rich waters towards the poles. And so that's a really important thing to kind of know. The dark blue areas there show very little photosynthesis, as do the yellow areas. They're areas that are where conditions aren't right. Not enough nutrients, not enough water, things like that. Again, in photosynthesis, this is a really, really important reaction. Almost all, but not all, almost all life on Earth ultimately comes from photosynthesis. Photosynthesis traps sunlight, energy from sunlight to be used in the making of sugars, and that it provides the basis for most food chains and most life on Earth. There is some life on Earth that is not dependent on photosynthesis. That comes from anaerobes that are doing other chemical reactions based on various different energy systems. We're going to talk about photosynthesis that generates oxygen. This is oxygenic photosynthesis. It's not the only type of photosynthesis, but it is the most productive. This was first carried out by cyanobacteria over 2 billion years ago. It's also carried out by seven groups of eukaryotic algae, and of course, all land plants. And in the algae and the land plants, it happens in a specific organelle called the chloroplast. What's so important about this? Well, this is generating all the food we eat. Okay, it either comes directly from plants or indirectly from plants or algae that have been eaten by animals or fish and then turned into food that we can eat. It also forms the base of all the food chains that in all the ecosystems that we are close to. It generates all the oxygen in the atmosphere, absolutely all. That's about 20 some percent of the atmosphere is determined by photosynthesis. And past energy from photosynthesis is stored in fossil fuels. And so not only everything we eat, building materials like cellulose in wood or in paper, but all the food, oxygen, really, really important. Photosynthesis occurs in two steps in the chloroplast. The first step is the light-dependent reactions. Those reactions rely on sunlight, and the energy from sunlight is used to split water molecules, releasing oxygen, and then the hydrogens and electrons are used to make ATP and NADHP, which carries those hydrogen ions and the ATP into the light-independent reactions that happen in the Calvin cycle. Okay, this occurs in the green portion of plants, not everywhere in plants, like in the roots or the tree, in the trunk, but in the light detecting organs, which are the leaves. Okay, the leaves have several layers of tissues. The outer layer is a secreted cuticle. Underneath that are epidermal cells. Those are epidermal and mesophyll cells. Those are the ones that will have chloroplasts, the organelles where photosynthesis occurs. Photosynthesis occurs nowhere else in the plant, only in those cells. The mesophyll cells will be the primary cells where that occurs. Okay, those cells will have chloroplasts, and within the chloroplasts are the pigments, chlorophyll. Chlorophyll captures the energy from sunlight, and that's where the reactions begin. Air has to get in the leaves, and so you can see there's stomata there. That allows carbon dioxide in. That's one of the substrates for the light-independent reaction. It also allows oxygen, the waste product of the light reactions, to get out, which is important for us. Okay, so here's a nice look at a chloroplast. Okay, the chloroplast has an outer membrane that's just covers it, and then it has a highly folded inner membrane, which are called the thylakoid membranes. Okay, there's stacks. These are folded into stacks. Those stacks are called the granum, and the stacks are connected by these little strands of membrane. And then what surrounds this is a fluid-filled portion called the stroma. Okay, the light-dependent reactions occur in the membranes of the thylakoids or grana. The light-independent reactions or Calvin cycle occur in the fluid-filled portions of the stroma. The light-dependent reactions are splitting water to release oxygen and then the hydrogen ions and electrons. The light-independent reactions or Calvin cycle will use those electrons and hydrogen ions and ATP to take carbon dioxide and fix the carbon, take it out of the air and fix it into an organic molecule, which is a sugar, can then be used for energy. So chloroplast, the structures you need to know are the thylakoid membranes, which contain the chlorophyll, and the clustered molecules called the photosystems, and they're stacked. The membranes are stacked into granum. There are connections between the grana, the lamella, and then the semi-liquid portion surrounding the thylakoid, which contains the enzymes for making sugars from carbon dioxide. That's in the stroma. Okay, so this is a really important kind of structural element, and if we look at this, we can kind of see it like that. The light-dependent reactions are working on what are called photosystems, which are clusters of pigment molecules and additional proteins that work to capture energy, split electrons and hydrogen ions from oxygen. And then the light-independent reactions, or Calvin cycle, are working in that stroma. And they're taking that ATP and NADPH, which was made in the thylakoids, and they're going to use that to make carbon dioxide, or to make sugars from carbon dioxide. All right, so a key thing in the light-dependent reaction is that there are these pigment molecules, chlorophyll, and they absorb energy from sunlight in the form of photons. And those photons, what they do is they can boost electrons into higher energy states so that they can be taken away from the bonds that they're normally involved in. This is called the photoelectric effect, and it depends upon the photon having enough energy. And so there are certain levels of energy that must be required for the photon to be able to do this. Okay, if we look at the light spectrum, we can see that light is a portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, kind of between infrared and UV light. The shorter the wavelength of the light, the more energy the light has. Invisible light, blue light, has the most energy. And the molecule of chlorophyll, when it's struck by a photon, okay, sometimes that energy is lost as heat, but if energy is in the right size packet, it can be absorbed by electrons and boost the electrons up into higher energy levels. Okay, when this happens, chlorophyll can then strip those electrons away from water. So chlorophyll tends to absorb light in very specific wavelengths. A lot of blue light, and then a little bit in the wavelengths of red. And there's different versions of chlorophyll, and they have slightly different absorption spectrum. The chlorophyll molecule itself, where this happens, is called the porphyrin ring structure. And this is an organic ring that has magnesium linked into some nitrogens. And it has alternating single and double bonds. Photons will excite this, and they will shuttle electrons away from this ring. That there's again two different versions of chlorophyll, and they differ in this spot shown here in the upper right. Okay, there's chlorophyll A, which has a methyl group there, and chlorophyll B, which has a carboxyl group there. Okay. Chlorophyll A is the main pigment in cyanobacteria. It's the pigment that directly converts light energy to chemical energy. Chlorophyll B absorbs light in a slightly different spectrum, and can pass that energy on to this chain. And so we see this then in simple experiments where we allow cyanobacteria to kind of migrate along a spectrum of light, and we find that the cyanobacteria will tend to migrate to areas where there's blue light of the right frequency and to areas of red light. To areas where they're green light, they will kind of that light's less usable. Chlorophyll appears green because it reflects that light. Okay, and so next time we're going to go into more detail in the light reactions. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about the Calvin cycle, which are the light independent reactions.